Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea, the show where we take a look at some of the biggest news stories surrounding Chelsea this week. Got some interesting stories to discuss with you as ever and to hear your thoughts about them. But just before I go into that, I've got a Q&A coming for Christmas on Christmas Day, and the deadline to ask questions is the 20th of December. I posted a video yesterday about the Q&A. Leave your comments on that video and the questions for the Q&A on that video as well. Link will be in the cards and also in the description box below. So definitely, if you want to ask a question, go there and do that. But going into today's video, naturally, so much of the talk is about the transfer window, the January transfer window. Of course, Chelsea having their ban overturned last week by CAS. It was only natural and inevitable that all the discussion would be about Chelsea transfer targets, and that's what it has been, and that's what we're going to discuss today. Firstly, it's a big question: who can replace Eden Hazard? That is the question posed by Simon Johnson in The Athletic, his article going in detail to who can solve Chelsea's creative problems, maybe add to Chelsea's attack in January. Simon Johnson says it is what Chelsea fans have been waiting for, the first real indication of the kind of player Frank Lampard is prioritising to buy in January. There are a number of areas in the squad that need addressing, but the confirmation he wants to find a replacement for Eden Hazard has sent a buzz around everyone connected at Stamford Bridge. Also in this article, Frank Lampard is quoted after the game against Lille, where he says there will be discussions about where we can strengthen. In the summer, we lost Eden Hazard, who has been a huge part of scoring and creating for us in the last few seasons. We need more competition in those creative areas. We have found a way in the team where we can still be competitive in the league and the Champions League. And going forward, you ask, can we be better in forward areas to help us to be more clinical? We would always look at that. The article predominantly discusses two players, and that is Wilfried Zaha and Jadon Sancho as options, predominantly in, of course, out on the wing for Chelsea. It also mentions the options currently there. You look at Willian. I've discussed in here before about his contract situation. His comments seem quite positive, that I think he would like to sign a contract. And if he's performing the way he is at the moment, I know this will frustrate some people because, of course, the criticism of Willian online. If he's performing the way he is at the moment, I would like to see him stay. I don't think he should be a starter long term, but he is offering something. The other night, he sets up the first goal. His experience, like other players like Dave, is proving so key for the younger players this year. But that's a situation that hasn't been sorted out yet. You look at Christian Pulisic and HUDSON-ODOI, still very young players who are only just coming into the Chelsea first team, especially Pulisic only just arriving. They'll have their ups and downs still to develop. And I think that that's, an area where there's still a lot of uncertainty about who's going to be the first starters for Chelsea, especially under Lampard. He's still finding out his best 11, still finding out about his players and learning about them as well. You can't go without mentioning Pedro, who I think potentially could be on his way in January. There's been talks about him potentially leaving, having offers in the Premier League and abroad. So that's a situation that needs to be rectified. If he leaves, a replacement needs to come in. I do think that Wilfried Zaha is probably the most likely option out of the big names that have been mentioned to come to Chelsea in January. He didn't get his move in the summer to either Everton or Arsenal. And you do think that Chelsea could potentially prize Zaha out of Palace. I think what's interesting to me in the article as well, they talk about Zaha and him being under consideration for an offer about 80 million would likely be enough to convince Palace to sell. Some of his stats I think are interesting. Zaha has registered 55 goals and 67 assists in 2 spells at Palace, which works out at a goal or assist every 263.3 minutes, just under 1 every 3 matches. And then the comparison is made with Jadon Sancho at Dortmund, which is said that Sancho has recorded 24 goals and 34 assists in just 76 appearances for Dortmund, a goal or assist every 117.9 minutes, the best rate of all three. That's in comparison as well to Eden Hazard's stats at Chelsea. It's difficult because Zaha, of course, plays for Crystal Palace. Sancho plays for Borussia Dortmund. Two very different clubs with two very different styles of football and different levels and quality of player. You saw Dortmund qualify for the last 16 in the Champions League. Palace usually are in mid-table, sometimes battling relegation. The style of football they play under Roy Hodgson is quite a pragmatic one. And you do got to give credit to Wilfried Zaha for what he's done at a club like Palace. He does have quality. He does have talent. I've discussed my doubts about him, predominantly because this season, I look at younger players who I think Chelsea should be investing their time in. Looking at the age of Wilfried Zaha. Zaha's not a hidden gem. He's been a very obvious player for a number of years now in the Premier League. I've always asked the question, and this is not concerning his attitude or application or anything. I just think it's interesting to me he hasn't moved already. Yes, the wealth in the Premier League has helped smaller clubs in the league hold their best players and demand and command a bigger fee for their best players. They don't have to sell. You've seen that with Palace, but I don't think that stopped clubs in the past, has it? You know, you look at Harry Maguire leaving Leicester. You look at Red Mahrez leaving Leicester as well. You could probably pick up other options in that area of players leaving from smaller clubs to bigger clubs, even in the last couple of years. I still don't think that's a big enough excuse for me of why a club hasn't come in for Zaha. I think some of that has to do with questions over his clinical nature. You know, if he does step up to a team like Chelsea about being more clinical, that is an area Chelsea have been criticised for and Lampard has criticised the team for. And then also spending 80 million on Zaha when you could wait potentially and spend more on Jadon Sancho, who is a younger player. I spoke about Sancho last week, so definitely go and check that out. But I don't know. I can't say I'd be too thrilled about Chelsea spending that money on Zaha. If he was to come in and prove he would be a revelation and score bundles of goals for Chelsea, happy days. But I just think Chelsea should be investing either their transfer money or investing their time in a player like Christian Pulisic and Callum Hudson-Odoi. That's my opinion. It will be interesting in January if a move is made for Wilfried Zaha, and if it is made, can Chelsea get Zaha out of Crystal Palace? We're going to have to wait and see on that one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The next one is about who would want to be a backup striker for Tammy. Now, there has been striker talk about who Chelsea could be targeting to add to that area of the pitch. Olivier Giroud has been linked away, and two names that have been regularly linked in recent weeks is the names of Timo Werner from RB Leipzig and Moussa Dembele from Lyon. Just looking at the stats, Werner has got 20 in 22 games for Leipzig this season, whilst Dembele has got 10 in 22 games this season. That's the difficulty for Lampard and for Chelsea is there was a comparison made by Matt Law, who wrote an article on this. It's almost a similar situation to what Harry Kane and Tottenham have in recent years of trying to bring in good backup for Harry Kane, because Harry Kane is, when he's fit, is always going to start for Tottenham because he's such an amazing striker. And Chelsea could fall into a similar problem as they have previously with Diego Costa and before that as well. You know, it's always difficult when there's such a good striker to tell a player you're probably going to be second choice, even if maybe they don't tell that to that player. I'm sure the player would know that. And I look at Werner, I look at Dembele, I look at their ages. They probably think they don't want to come to Chelsea and spend very important years of their career on the bench. You know, Michy Batshuayi hasn't probably regretted joining Chelsea because he's won some big titles for Chelsea and he's, you know, scored some very important goals within Chelsea's history if you look at it. But at the same time, his progression has been limited very much by playing at Chelsea because he hasn't been a first choice. He's never got that chance. Some of that is down to him. Some of that I also think is just down to luck and fortune of coming back, seeing Tammy Abraham scoring a lot of goals. Before that, it was Diego Costa. But I do think, you know, Giroud's exit looks imminent. He still isn't playing. And Michy's consistency and, you know, whether there's enough confidence and belief by Lampard for him. If Tammy does go down injured, I still think Chelsea need 3 strikers. I don't like the idea of going in for the rest of the season with only 2 strikers. You know, injury, suspensions, just different options in games. But can Chelsea convince players of that capability away from their clubs? It's going to command a high fee, and also just, you know, the confidence of those players to come to Chelsea, I think, is interesting. Those are 2 very obvious names. Could there be more hidden gems out there Chelsea could go for who would be willing to wait? We're going to have to wait and see on that one. Let me know your opinions on Dembele and Werner in the comments below. And the final story is about a contract for Fikayo Tomori. I remember discussing this at the start of the year. A few weeks into the season, that's of course been linked with Tammy Abraham as well. Nizar Kinsella from Goal has reported that Tomori is closing in on a new Chelsea deal. After talks entered an advanced stage, Frank Lampard has promoted a host of academy players from the club's Cobham training base, with Tomori one of those to have benefited from the manager's faith. Tomori has been one of the top performers this season. I'd probably put him top 5, really. I think in terms of where he was at the start of the season, I think there's probably maybe from outsiders who believe that Tomori was always like first choice and Lampard was always going to give him that chance. He was 5th choice predominantly during pre-season. David Luiz left. There was that opportunity. He didn't even start the season. Frank went with Zuma and Christensen, but then Tomori came in, took his chance, and has looked brilliant at times this year, and has really impressed. There hasn't been many games, I think, even though you could argue Chelsea's biggest problem has been defensively. Yes, we've conceded goals, but I don't think that's all down to defenders. I think sometimes we can be very simplistic in just pinning it all on defenders. When you look at stats about individual errors leading to goals, there aren't many. It's collectively, of course, it's the connection with midfield. It's about space, it's about communication. Sometimes it's about the goalkeeper as well. It's a number of things. It's about defending better as a team. I think Tomori has been one of Chelsea's brightest players this year, and it's great to see this follows up with a lot of good contract deals Chelsea have been doing. Mason Mount, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Callum Hudson-ODOI. I'm pretty sure Tammy's close, and as it seems, Tomori will be close as well. It only seems obvious these are going to be big players for Chelsea moving forward, and especially for Frank Lampard. So it's big news, and hopefully Chelsea can tie it up maybe before Christmas. But really positive news as ever. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. So that is it for this edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Let me know your thoughts on everything I discussed in the comments below. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again.